Charlotte Soccer Show. John Hayes, Danny Brams. Danny, we're at a new location on this sun-splashed Tuesday morning in the QC. It's great to see you here at Muggs Coffee Bar.
Sunny but cold, Johnny. Sunny but cold, my friend.
You've ordered a full French press over here that has been brought to our table, and I like that vibe.
I love it here at Muggs because I said, hey, I'll take a cup of French press, and they gave us an entire French press thing. I've been just like refilling. I think this is beautiful. Having a big pot of coffee and a mug at my table is dangerous for me because I never really know how much I've had. I'm just constantly topping it off after a few sips every time. So I'm hyped up. I'm caffeinated. I'm not quite too jittery yet, so we should be in that sweet spot, that good zone. And love a new location on the show, love a new manager at the club, and love a new experience for you and I, John. We had a lot of fun doing something we've never done before.
And we did, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Let me just tell people where Muggs is. It's on Park Road in South Charlotte, right by the corner of Park Road and Selwyn Avenue here in the retail district here. There's Harris Teeter in here. I've never...
Right by Al's Tavern.
Lou's Tavern.
Yeah, Lou's Tavern. Excuse me, sorry.
Al,
yeah. Al, Lou, one of them, yeah.
So, but yes, we are here to talk about Dean Smith, his introductory press conference. And Danny, we were there. We've got a lot to discuss about our time spent at Atrium Health Performance Park on Monday. Danny wanted to start the show with playing your question from the press conference, which I thought was a fantastic question. Let's hear how Dean Smith answered it.
Our supporters, our hardcore supporters, about the match day atmosphere that we can bring to help the squad be as most successful on the pitch.
Well, I think from the numbers that we get into the stadium for the home games, tells you its own story how much they support this football club, and our job is to make sure that we make every team that comes to play us at the Bank of America Stadium dislike it. We want to make a siege mentality where it's us against them and go and get as many points as we can. Make it a real tough place to come, but enjoyable certainly for supporters and ourselves.
So tell me about the experience.
I mean, what an honor. It seems a little cheesy, like being proud that I asked a question, but it was fun to be there. It was fun to be in the room. I've worked in media my whole career, so I'm no stranger to a press conference room.
Right.
But a lot of times I'm the producer. I'm the behind the scenes guy. Like I'm the guy setting up the reporters and the question askers. So it's fun to sort of flip the script a little bit there and be someone who participates in a presser like that something I've been close to my whole life. So very cool. And my whole point of asking the question, I had a friend say, "Oh, you're lobbing softballs to the new manager already," and I'd just say, "Hey, first off, it was a softball game, so of course I'm going to lob softballs. I mean, it's a new manager press conference at a young MLS club. We're not exactly doing War and Peace here, so I don't think we needed to necessarily be grilling the new guy on his introductory presser. So I was happy to just hear from him, and I think my question was pointed in the direction of what this show is all about, which is the fans. The first words that were ever spoken on the show, "Soccer's for the fans," by you, Johnny. And so I was going to ask Dean Smith about the fans, and I want to know what is his message to the fans. What does he know about the fan culture we've built here, and what does he need from us to make it even better? I've always said, we are the club. The players and the fans are equally parts of the club. It's just a matter of squad and supporters, and we're all in this together. And so that's what I want to know is how can we contribute? And I loved the phrase that we picked out, that you picked out for your article, Johnny, which was siege mentality. I love when you ask a guy a question, you get just to drop a great phrase like that. And siege mentality is how I'm approaching every game of the Fortress for this season.
Well, it's perfect because it fits into the theme of, I think, what we've tried to create on this show, which is fill the fortress, protect the keep, and that royal theme that Charlotte FC has developed to create such a great brand, right? The club all of a sudden has this fantastic brand, and whether Dean Smith was doing this on purpose or not with that phrase, I don't think he was.
How is a club that's called the Crown just now hiring its first English manager? What are we doing here?
Good point. Yeah, it feels like a natural appointment. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, you're right. And I wrote about that phrase. Siege mentality. You can hear my column if you stick around to the end of this podcast. You can hear me recite the column on the show. First time we're doing that. But you can also go to the Substack page, Charlotte Soccer City, and read the column there as well. The link to that column will be in the show notes. Make sure that you subscribe to that. It's free, and it will remain free for the entirety of 2024 and the 2024 campaign. So excited for everybody
That's a big promise, because this is going to be valuable stuff. Like, you need to be on this Substack. Like, it's just getting up and running here in this, like, the deadest part of the off season, and you're already cranking out content. I can't even imagine what's going to happen once we get up and running for the games.
So just stick around, listen to the episode, and you can hear me recite that column here at the end. I heard this on one of my favorite podcasts, which is the No Laying Up podcast, a golf column. Kevin Van Valkenburg, KVV, former ESPNer, like myself, current ESPNer. You are, Danny. People don't forget that. People, this guy's a pro, and I heard him do that on a podcast recently, and I thought to myself, wow, I should do that on the Charlotte Soccer Show. So props to No Laying Up for giving me a great idea.
The Charlotte Soccer Show universe is growing and expanding in all kinds of directions and ways. A ton of firsts for us this month on the show, but we stay true. Like, heading into year 3, I'm just so excited because I just, the discussions and the conversations that we're going to be able to have, the parties, like, I just foresee so many great things under this new regime coming in. I feel like, maybe fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, I'm probably a Charlotte FC supporter. I mean, I'm all in for the new manager and the new, like, everything that's going to happen. I truly believe, and until proven otherwise, you remember how overconfident I was at the start of last year. I thought we were going to go and just destroy the league in year 2. It didn't happen, but I'm right back where I was. I think we're going to go destroy the league in year 3 now, and there's reason to believe that it's not just a pipe dream. I mean, we have good foundation of players. It's never a good thing to have that dubious honor of leading the league and drop points from winning positions, but regression to the mean is your friend in that case.
There was a couple questions at the press conference about dropping points in the last 15 minutes. I know sporting director Zoran Krneta didn't want to hear that question. He's sick of hearing about the last 15 minutes of every match.
Zoran's body language in the presser was so great, because all the questions were for Dean, and Zoran at one point he's like, why am I sitting up here again? And then every question they asked Z was like, I can't answer that right now. We're here to talk about Dean. It's just so funny.
It was. There was some really fun moments at the press conference, I thought. Some questions. First of all, Scott Fowler was kind of sitting very close to David Tepper, which was hilarious to begin with.
2 old buddies.
Do your research on that one on your own time. I thought that was hilarious. And then secondly, the reporter from the Charlotte Observer, I think his name's Alex
Zeitler, yeah.
He was basically standing right next to David Tepper and was like, so 3 coaches, this is the 3rd coach, and
so true.
There was like a couple awkward questions like that really didn't fit the vibe of the day. There was a U.S. Open question as well, and this goes to the point that you were talking about as far as people saying, your question was a softball question. One thing about the media business that I wholeheartedly believe in, and someone that you and I have worked closely with taught me this, which is you kind of have to know your platform.
Yeah.
Because your platform changes day to day, hour to hour. Like, where is your voice at the moment? And was that the right time to ask really difficult, tough questions of the sporting director? No, it absolutely was not, because you're doing Dean Smith a disservice, because Dean Smith is brand new into this regime. He's part of this club for the first time, officially being introduced. Why are we turning over old leaves with Zoran Krneta? You can do that maybe afterwards as well, because the club provided a great opportunity for media members to talk one-on-one with Dean Smith, to talk one-on-one with Zoran Krneta, with the whole front office, with a bunch of people afterwards as well. So there was opportunity to have those conversations, but right there, and you can see this, and I'm not saying that anybody did grandstand at this press conference. I don't think anybody did that. But you can pick it out easily when someone chooses the wrong platform to voice something that probably doesn't fit.
Yeah, well, the quality of a question is usually gauged, I've learned in this business, by the answer that it elicits. So when you get a good answer, you ask a good question. And when you ask a question where the answer is, I'm not going to talk about that right now because that's not what we're here to talk about, then you probably shouldn't have asked the question, because you wasted everybody's time, for sure. I think the analogy is not a perfect one, but what it pops in my mind is Thanksgiving, the young member of a family brings the new significant other, boyfriend or girlfriend, home for the holidays, to the family.
Always
and
a very
it's like
stressful
Dean Smith was that new love interest who's been brought in, and we're like the uncles and aunts, and like, are we gonna act like a bunch of assholes and grill this guy in his first time in this new place, or are we gonna show him what we're all about and say, hey, we're a loving family, we're a community, we're here to build, we want you to succeed, we want this new relationship to flourish. And so that's why that was the tone to take in that situation. That's where our voice and our platform need to be, and not just us, everybody in the room.
Oh, it's a great analogy, honestly, and it's very personal to me because that's basically how my marriage happened. It's that I outkicked my coverage, and my family realized that like very quickly. And I never in my life before have I seen my family, specifically my aunt and my parents and my sister and that whole crew. I remember my aunt like giving a pep talk, being like, hey, Rachel's coming up here. Everybody be on your best fucking behavior.
Don't scare this girl away.
Don't screw this up for him, please. Whatever you do.
That's great. They came through, yeah.
Yeah, so, and they did come through. And I think the point is exactly that, where, Dean Smith was supposed to feel like he was walking into a positive environment with a good culture, and despite maybe some things that have happened in the past that didn't matter on that day, which on Monday, December 18th. Right now, things will change as we move forward. Danny, the Super Draft, as we're recording it this morning, Dean Smith got introduced on Monday, and he will select his first players on Tuesday, which is pretty hilarious to think about.
And people did ask him, like, how familiar are you with the squad? And he noted, hey, I haven't really even checked in with the squad yet. I've talked to Ashley Westwood, the captain, but I wonder how much of that was artifice. I have a feeling it was more like he didn't want to mention certain players and not mention other players. I'd have to think that he's got a little bit more formulated opinions of the squad than he revealed in that presser, probably in his mind.
I agree that he has opinions formulated, but I believe him at face value as far as not talking to anybody.
Yeah, I'm not saying he would lie. I don't think he would directly lie about that's something.
I just think that it's not in his best interest to talk to anyone.
Right, good point. And everyone's on vacation. That's what he said, and that's
because you don't want to send the wrong message.
George Marks was out freaking hiking in Hawaii with Koa Santos.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you stalk the Instagrams, you know where everybody's at. You know who's working really hard this offseason, by the way? Kalina. Kalina's just he is a gym life IG in it, like big time. This
is a big opportunity for him. Huge opportunity for him, because when you think about MLS and what position has kind of started to get big time transfers, it's the goalie position. And I'm not saying this happens to Kalina because he's kind of over the hill as far as age is concerned for that. But at the same time, coming off of back surgery and trying to prove to the new manager that he's the guy to lead this team. We've talked about that, and I think mentioning Kalina as somebody that's working hard is a very good thing because he needs to be working hard. This isn't his job to walk back to. It's anybody's job.
And hopefully everybody's working hard, and hopefully the manager will get to know these guys and start to figure out what he wants to do with his squad. I bring it up as just a point to say that he's probably not the major decision maker on the super draft that's happening later today after we record this episode.
I don't disagree with that.
I'm sure he can weigh in,
right?
And he can look at some players and be like, well, in my experience, it's taught me that we should make the decision this way if it's an either or. But I think that Thomas and Zoran and Ben will be all over the main draft decisions hopefully today.
I agree they will be, but Dean Smith's input will, and he said as much during the press conference or afterwards. He basically was just like, hey, I let them know what I prefer, and they go get that.
Yeah, I don't expect him to be a shrinking violet in the room whatsoever. He definitely, when he walked in, he kind of had the presence. He owned the room, for the most part. He's a tall guy, he's a big guy. Like he has like a physical presence that and he's affable and he's smiling and he's laughing. A lot of the pictures I saw, every picture I saw, the guy's smiling. That was taken from yesterday, and I just think. Can't wait for him to get started.
I'll tell you a good nugget from afterwards. Got a chance to talk to Dean Smith. The club did such a nice job hosting the media members afterwards for a lunch. and introduced Dean Smith, had him available for some one-on-ones. I know there were some interviews out there with some other outlets. I just wanted to introduce myself and say hello, and we got to talking, of course, about golf. You mentioned golf in your question as well.
yeah. I had to hit him up that.
After talking,
give him something to remember you by. I was the only person to ask him about golf. If next time he sees me, he's like, "Hey, that's the guy that asked me about."
Well, I told him. I said, "Hey, that was John with Charlotte Soccer Show. My co-host is the one that asked you about golf during the press conference." And we just talked to Greg Evans, who, by the way, told you to say hello. And he goes, "Oh, Greg?" He lit up immediately. He said, "Oh, Greg. Oh, is he still with The Athletic? Tell him I said hello." So that connection is real, 100% between both of those guys.
Go back and listen to that episode.
You should go back and listen to our previous episode with Greg Evans from The Athletic. Gave us the inside story on Dean Smith. Greg has known Dean, and Dean has known Greg from quite a bit of time. Both, I guess, cut their teeth in the West Midlands. Greg with the Birmingham Now and now The Athletic, and of course Dean with Walsall. Yeah.
Walsall.
It's hard to pronounce. But anyway, I said to him, Danny, I said, "Hey, have you gotten down to Augusta?" Because Greg had mentioned something about the Masters. I figured that he had played. I said, "Did you play Augusta?" And he goes, "Oh no, I was actually, in fact, I was at Augusta for the Masters last year." And that's when I got a call that said Leicester City wants to hire you.
Wow.
So he was on the grounds at Augusta, and he couldn't do anything because you're not allowed to bring your phone in there. And so I asked him, I said, "Wait a minute, did you use one of the payphones that are available at Augusta National to sign the deal with Leicester City?" He's like, "No, I didn't use the payphones, but I did have to leave the premises and go home and figure out and get on a flight and get back to England so I could finish the season with Leicester City."
Amazing.
And then he kind of racked his brain. He said, "You know what? When I got hired by Norwich, I was in New York. And when I got hired by Charlotte, I was in New York." He's like, "Wait a minute, I've got my last 3 jobs. I've been in the United States as I've decided that I was going to take the job," which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So he's somebody that is regularly here on the on U.S. soil, and is somebody that I think isn't coming in blind, right? He gets the culture. He understands the vibe here. I think this is going to work better than a Wayne Rooney appointment, than a Gary Neville appointment, than English appointments that we've seen in the past.
Which one of the Nevilles? I
have no clue.
Yeah, one of the Nevilles.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
Gary and who?
Phil.
Phil. Phil. Yeah, exactly.
They both suck.
Totally. Thanks for correcting me on that. I think you've corrected me on that.
No, I'm correcting myself. Yeah,
3 or 4 times on the show because I legitimately don't know.
It is Phil that we're talking about here in this.
Okay.
Gary's Gary's a sportscaster now. They both played for Man United. I hate them both.
Gary's the one that did that great interview with Dele Alli. Right?
There you go. Yeah,
right?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now maybe that'll help me remember for the next time around. So anyways, it was really nice to just kind of shoot the breeze with Dean Smith yesterday. Obviously got to catch
Aaron Neville is my only Neville brother. I just got to say, maybe it ain't over till it's over.
I made sure I gave Darius Barnes some love, congratulated him for winning MLS Next Pro.
I told him that it was the interview on our show that put him over the top for Exec of the Year. And he said, "You're probably right about that, Brams. You're probably right."
I've got some inside information from Zoran we can discuss after this recording as well. Something that I learned yesterday that was very interesting. Isn't paramount to the squad today, but just maybe a bit of history about the squad. We'll talk about when the microphone's off. But anyway, that's the type of access that we're getting here on the Charlotte Soccer Show. We just want to thank the club. I want to thank the club for giving us that opportunity on Monday, involving us, because specifically Woody Wilder, who runs communications for Charlotte FC, I need to give him props on this show for one specific reason, right? It's because you and I have worked with many people throughout our career who have that role.
Yeah.
And there's certain ways that you can operate within that role. And one of the ways that you can operate is to totally box out new media, to not respect new media, and to just hang your hat on, doing the media rounds, the
local NBC affiliate, and Joe Schmo Radio,
the paper, the radio affiliate, and not only were we in the house, the Queen's Pitch was in the house as well. The Crowncast was there.
Fan TV.
Exactly. So as far as new media in the building, Charlotte FC just knocked it out of the park. So congrats to them on that.
Yeah, and I would say we wouldn't have had even a chance of getting invited to that room if it wasn't for the strength of Tifos Nation. Like the fact that we have the very best podcast listening audience in the entire world is what makes this show strong enough to be part of the scene. Thank you all very much for doing that, because otherwise we'd be screwed.
Yeah. Well, we've heard that before. Yeah, we heard that before. Hopefully we don't hear that from Dean here in a couple of months. Because things are going to start happening pretty quickly. And that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, we're not going to dive into the super draft on this episode, just simply because you're going to see the names drafted, and then we're going to do some deep dives later in the month or next month when we figure out who these players are.
You're traveling for the holidays, John. I've got some holiday stuff going on. But then again, right after the super draft is the schedule release. So MLS schedule drops later this week as well, on Wednesday. So it's just like one thing after another, and then it's free agency. And the one thing I wanted to ask Dean about, but I kind of shied off, I wanted to ask Dean Smith about, and I want to ask Zoran about signings philosophy and what's the move. He just brought in the 2 new international slots. Obviously those have got to be targeted for some potential players, so I want to ask about that. But the reason I didn't is because his previous answers to like some other questions has sort of indicated to me that he was not really in the mode. He wasn't really able to comment definitively on that, so I didn't want to waste my time asking a question with no answer. So
yeah, because if I was to ask a question about that, I would have said, are you going to use one of, well, I guess you don't have to use an international slot on Josh Sargent.
Right, you don't. Yeah, exactly.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask. Hey,
who are we going to get?
Who have you managed in the past that you're going to bring over here?
Right.
It's the same question I asked to Greg Evans on the show, because I would be really shocked if there's nobody brought to town that hasn't worked with Dean Smith before.
I think that you could get good answers to that in a one-on-one. I don't think in that press conference setting that we were going to get the right info on that. So, but it is top of mind, and it's just the next thing that comes after the draft, after the schedule. We start talking about signings. We start talking about leaving. Zoran did comment on there's been some leavings. There's been some. We anticipate some goings because there's been some.
Let's talk about that. A report this morning about Kamil Jóźwiak.
Yeah, that's true.
On his way out, potentially
back to Poland.
Back to Poland. Karol Swiderski, those rumors are still out there as well. Karol's been adamant about returning to Europe. His agent has been adamant about returning to Europe. So I think the question was posed, you answered it on social this morning, about does the Poznan still exist without our Polish players? Because I asked you a couple weeks ago, I said, is it possible that Charlotte FC loses every one of their Polish players this offseason? Because remember, Sobocinski's already gone.
Yeah, and Pareba was not re-upped at Crown Legacy. Yeah. He figured he's moving up to USL somewhere.
This is kind of off the wall, and it's just a gut feeling. But when I saw Pareba training with Swiderski back in Europe, I knew it was over.
Yeah, it's like this is the sign.
They're both like, we're out of that club. Yeah. Pareba's out. They didn't want him. Swiderski's looking around. He's like, wait, there's nobody that speaks Polish at the club anymore. Right. Kamil's leaving. Sobocinski's gone. Yeah, with
Sobo, it was kind of, you got the vibe of just had a young baby. Just had a baby. Just had a baby. Young family, wants to get back to the old country and be closer to his roots. That makes a lot of sense. Kamil, I'm not sure. I mean, Kamil's like always smiling. If you ever saw him in public, he's just like always smiling. So who knows what's really going on in his head? But it seems, just from the very far outside looking in, it looks like a guy that wants to just go back home to me as well.
And it affirms or confirms my belief from the very beginning that this was all a package deal. Does it not?
No. Yeah, you always describe him as like the kid who's on the team just because his best friend is the captain of the team.
This was all a coordinated effort to give Karol Swiderski the tools around him to feel comfortable in his American adventure.
And honestly, I don't mind that. I think it's good because Karol is our biggest investment. He still is, right? So it's like, why wouldn't you bring in a few supplementary pieces to try to set him up for success? And Karol's had success here, not the ultimate success.
Right, but my point, and it's always been, Danny, is that Kamil Jóźwiak would not be on the squad if Karol Swiderski was not on the squad.
Right, and all the evidence points in that direction. Correct.
But there's one last opportunity here, the next month or so, if Karol moves and Kamil stays, and that that will be proven wrong.
And the thing is, Camille had his fans here. There's people here in the Charlotte FC fan base who are much bigger Camille fans than they are Carroll fans.
And I think that's a real conversation, and I think the reason why is because they decided to be Camille Uzviak fans before they actually saw him play. Like, they just liked him.
That's true. But having done the same thing myself on some older players like Alan Franco in year one and stuff like that, you just want to bond with something. You just want to attach yourself to something, and so you just like, all right, that's it. Like George is saying, like, we're Jerk Store is the line. We're going with that one, and you just lock in.
I agree. I'm just like, and with a new club that happens, right? Because it reminds me of when we discuss the idea that there's no club legend yet. Right? There's no, well, there is former players now, but
is Fucci club legend?
If he continues to be on the staff and work for the club for another 4 years or so, I think you could argue that he is.
I think you'd have to get the head coach position to become a legend, but I'm with you.
Hey, did you notice something yesterday? I don't know if you did. Nobody really brought it up. I don't think anybody really wrote about it, but I did notice that. Did you realize that yesterday was basically the 4-year anniversary of the club being announced?
That's crazy. I didn't notice, but it is crazy.
And did you notice that the day that the club was announced, remember where David Tepper went to the French Quarter, and there was a party there, and then down in Loso as well, at Yancey there was a party. Well, there was a game being played
on the TVs
at Hooligans.
Yeah.
And it was Dean Smith coaching
against Liverpool.
And Aston Villa absolutely crushed Liverpool on that day.
5-0 win, I think, right? So shout out to Matt Chantry and the Westwood Tea Gang. That's how I became aware of that connection, and I thought it was a really cool flashback to highlight.
So not only are these decisions being made by Charlotte FC, is the club changing, but it feels like the stars are almost aligning. Yeah, and that things are happening as the Earth makes the trip around the sun and hits that same spot, and here we are. And things are kind of lining up in a way that. You could argue is a little bit of destiny, a little bit of fate. I
got one more for you. Did you know he also shares a name with the legendary basketball coach in North Carolina?
That's amazing. Oh, that was also another really nice moment during the press conference where Dean Smith. Here's one thing that you do know. Dean Smith has Googled himself. Yes, He did mention that. When he Googled Dean Smith, the legendary basketball coach comes up, and I think that back and forth was really nice because it put the people who have been, for some reason, complaining about the Dean Smith jokes in comparison. Really it kind of put them in their place and made them kind of realize that this isn't actually that big of a deal, that this is actually a pretty big connection to a state that has a ton of sporting history, and Dean Smith is maybe the biggest name in the state's sporting history.
Right. It's just fun. Like, can we have some fun with our soccer club and our new manager, for fuck's sake? Come on.
Maybe Michael Jordan's a bigger name than Dean Smith.
But Dino. Props to Dino, because he knew he was waiting for the question. He had a great answer prepared of, well, if I can be as successful as he was, then everything's going to work out fine. And then he also had the four corners thing. He was like, he knows that Dean Smith, the basketball coach, is famous for the four corners. So he's like, our four corners tenets in soccer are a little bit different than what he coached.
And again, that's another.
But I'm familiar.
That's another stars aligning moment, because the FA, the Football Association in England, it does have a four corners system, right? And Dean Smith has grown up in this system as part of the English FA, and those four corners are physicality, technicality, tactical play, and mental play. Yeah. I mean, it was. I think those are the four. But either way, it's like it was a real answer, and I was unbelievably impressed, because for me it was just one of those things where I learned so much about the English FA yesterday, because I believe those four corners to be like the new four corners of the Carolinas, right? Because we're moving now into a new era. And by the way, a technical, tactical, physical, mental. I think that's what I said.
That's all you need, you chose a different order, but yes, that's exactly what you said. So here, let me ask you this question, because I'm wondering now, I'm thinking, Is there any chance that Dean Smith didn't really know what he was walking into yesterday? He's like, okay, my first intro presser in America. I've done this 5 or 6 times over in England. Do you think he walked in that presser, not sure what to expect, and then after a few questions started getting all these softballs from the local media? It was like, this is easy. I could do this all day. Like this is nothing compared to the hostile English press I'm used to back across the pond. I wonder if he's like, man, like I got it easy over here.
It was definitely a change of pace. Because remember, if you think about the press conference he's done recently, it was during 2 tough spells.
Yeah.
The Leicester situation, more manageable than the Norwich situation. The Norwich run in the championship was poor. I wanted to ask him about working for the Norwich ownership group, kind of also a couple that owns Norwich. They have for a very long time. Curious what it's like now working with David Tepper, who's obviously owns this club but has done so for a very short time. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, yes. I mean, I think that there was a cakewalk for Dean Smith, and I don't think it'll stay that way.
Yeah,
because this is MLS. Things happen.
Right.
And if Charlotte,
we're sick of losing. We're sick of 2 seasons of mediocre play. Well, it'll turn south real fast if it doesn't turn north real fast.
Right. So, one thing I wanted to make sure that we talked about today was realistic expectations.
Okay.
Because when I went back and watched the press conference, when I went back and listened for the key quotes to churn out my column, I realized very quickly that maybe I didn't realize in the room at the time because I was listening for interesting phrases to write off of. But I then started to realize that Dean Smith and David Tepper and Joe LeBou and Zoran Krneta, the entire club narrative changed. Right? The entire existence so far for Charlotte FC, it's been, let's make the playoffs.
Right.
Let's pack the keep. Let's have a party. And yesterday, that narrative switched to playoffs is not good enough.
That was the first thing that both Zoran and Dean said.
We're here to win MLS Cup in the next year or 2.
Yeah. Dean said, if we don't win MLS Cup next year, we'll win it the year after that, which is pretty damn cool for sure. And he talked about ambition, and he had a great joke cracked up the room when he was like, I'm not the type of guy that thinks about getting fired right before I started taking a brand new job. And he's like, it's not about when I leave here. And we talked about this with Greg Evans. And it's like, he's like, I'm here to win. He's like, if I didn't think that we could win the MLS Cup right away, then what would I even be doing here?
Which I think that is more of a stock answer than the other comments.
True, but I heard the conviction behind it for sure.
Right, but I think that's the right thing to say, and I think anybody who takes anybody that takes any job will say, I got hired here because I wanted to accomplish what the goal is, right? But either way, the fact that the entire club narrative has switched to winning MLS Cup and hosting an MLS Cup game at Bank of America Stadium.
Host MLS final is what Zoran said.
I mean, to me, this is, and we've waited a while into the podcast to discuss this, but I wanted to make sure we got to it. This is a serious statement of intent.
Yeah.
Do you believe it?
100%. I mean, that's what hiring Dean Smith is a statement of intent, for sure.
Yeah, that's the phrase you use.
Like I said this, right? I said to go from a guy who, won in Ecuador and a guy who was Patrick Vieira's assistant, and now all of a sudden they've got a English Premier League manager who's successfully negotiated promotion campaigns from the championship. It's just a whole other level. It's like no disrespect to MAR or Christian Latanzio for what they've done in their lives. They're accomplished professionals, but this is just a whole other level. It's a level up Luke situation.
It is. Poor Luke got totally railroaded by the Charlotte FC press conference yesterday after making his appearance on the independent social channels.
We'll get it out there. We'll help spread that word because Luke did a great job in that video.
He did. But hey, Luke, that was a lesson in, and I know you know this. That was a lesson in publishing content at the right time.
He didn't make the decision.
No, I know. It was a tough time to have that published yesterday with all the buzz in and around Charlotte FC. But I mean, for me, I hear that, Danny, and I feel a little bit cautious. I feel a little bit like I hear the bark, where's the bite?
Yeah, prove it. Let's see it. Prove it, for sure.
And I think hiring someone like Dean Smith does prove that Charlotte FC is a proper club, and you'll hear more about that from my column. But I need to see something here in the next 30 days.
Yeah, well, how about this? Don't start 0-3. You'll already be miles ahead of both of your predecessors, and show us something early in Spark. How about? I'm
not even talking about playing. I'm not even talking about playing games at this point. I'm talking about building the roster. That's where you don't need to show me on the field.
What I would say is we need just as much of a statement of intent with a new DP,
because that's what you asked for,
as we do with the coaching.
Right? Because you said you were looking for one thing this offseason.
Superstar signing. Not, I mean, I can't say Messi level because there is no Messi level. Messi is his own level, but I'm talking like a Frank Lampard level when he was signed by New York City, which I just popped in my head. Kind of funny, he was one of the other finalists for this job, but just someone of that level, of that kind of name recognition. They can be towards the end of their career. I don't want the result of what happened when Frank Lampard came to MLS, but what I'm saying is let's go get someone like that who's just like a superstar. Alternatively, there's other guys who are not star power, but will be so super good. There's a guy playing for Leicester, Dean Smith's old club, Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. He's a British kid.
This is the second time you've named him on the show.
He's an absolute stud. He had a goal and assist yesterday for Leicester. He's one of those players that destroys the championship, but wasn't quite good enough to stay on the pitch when Leicester was in the Premier League. And he was also behind James Maddison, but still, he would just be the best player in MLS. Just something like that. One of these guys who just is a top level championship player, top La Liga player, not quite good enough to make it all the way in the Premier League. Bring him over.
Well, I think maybe a good example of this kind of signing that is not a Messi signing, and what Inter Miami is doing is Cucho Hernandez with the crew.
He played for Watford.
He played on the wing for Watford.
Wasn't quite good enough to stick in the Premier League, but dominates MLS.
I thought he was good enough to stick in the Premier League, and at a club like Watford, who, by the way, got relegated and is in the Championship right now.
Good point, yeah.
So he still would be playing at Watford if
and he may leave MLS after this great season he had.
Right, but either way, I hate having this discussion without putting a name out there, so I'm going to put a name out there that would be really, really tough to get, but potentially could get bought, and it's James Ward-Prowse at West Ham.
JWP.
And I think that what he's doing for West Ham is really great. And what is West Ham playing for this season?
Europa at best, I think.
They need to keep their squad big, but if they want an injection of cash this January, they might be able to get some cash for James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I would say about James Ward-Prowse is maybe he plays a little bit too similarly to Ashley Westwood. We talked about the Westwood ball and his ability on the free kick situation, but Ward-Prowse would be such a professional signing.
And he's even that much better with a free kick, even than Westwood. I mean, Ward-Prowse is just something special with the free kick. It's just.
And you and I have talked about Ward-Prowse for a while, and by the way, you have to have two last names.
Right, both our suggestions are hyphenated last names. You gotta love that for sure.
We had talked about how he's too small for the Premier League. His skill set is there. We always used to ask ourselves, why is he at Southampton? Why is he at Southampton? Mm-hmm. Why is he still at Southampton? And he finally gets his move to West Ham, and he's playing well. But to me, this is the summit for Ward-Prowse in the Premier League. I don't think he's moving anywhere that's a bigger club than West Ham. So he needs to make a decision.
Right.
Is he going to finish his career at West Ham? And remember, it could be a summer signing as well. Things don't get done in January. I will offer the club a little bit of grace to wait until the summer. I will.
I agree. I will. Depending on if we sell Carroll in January, we need to bring in a new player in January.
Right.
If we keep Carroll, then we're not going to bring in a new player.
You know who the better version, and just because I'm thinking about West Ham, do you know who the better version of Kamil Jóźwiak is? Plays for West Ham.
Paqueta?
No, Jared Bowen.
Bowen, okay, nice.
Jared Bowen's a perfect example of a player who was kicking way above his weight.
Sure.
Jared Bowen was a championship player.
Yeah.
That was signed by West Ham out of the championship. I forget what squad he was on in the championship.
Was he on Hull City?
I can't remember. That annoys me that I can't remember. Because when they signed Jared Bowen, I thought to myself,
look up Hull. I'm going to guess. I'm pushing all my chips in on Hull City.
I think you're gonna lose to the house on that one because I don't think it's Hull City. But
keep going.
If Jared Bowen is a perfect example of somebody that came out of a physical league, was injected into an MLS club, or excuse me, a Premier League club like West Ham, and has showed out completely. And he plays in a very similar style to where Camille Hughes at.
37 goals and 141 appearances for West Ham for Jared Bowen,
which is way more output than people expected.
Since his 2020 move from Hull City.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Always trust the fantasy player. I know where all these randoms came from.
Man, Hull City. Wow, what a pull. Good for you. I really did not think it was Hull
Tigers,
City.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Jared Bowen is a guy that Charlotte FC could.
I don't hate
sign.
it. I don't hate it. That's a real nice. That's a Carlos Heel type of signing. For sure. Like one of those guys who's just at a certain level.
He's the winger that we've always needed.
Yeah,
he is.
Yeah, for
Jared
sure.
Bowen
He does the work. He does the work. For sure. There's other players too. Yeah, guys that have played for Dean Smith before. It's funny. I was thinking. I was like, I wonder what Anwar El Ghazi's up to. The guy who used to play for Dino at Villa, and he got his contract was terminated in Germany for making controversial statements about the war in the Middle East. So probably not going to be a target for us. But like former Dean Smith players, I think are definitely on the list to be on the target, to potentially come in.
I'm not going to say that this was a calculated statement just because we're talking about players. Jonathan Rowe is somebody that Dean Smith mentioned yesterday as when talking about young players. Jonathan Rowe,
the guy I gave him his debut, and now he's still playing. Right?
He's at Norwich City this year.
Yeah.
Norwich is fighting for playoff spots, and Jonathan Rowe is somebody who is 20 years old, who is in the very beginning stages of his career, who's lighting up the championship. He's somebody that if Charlotte FC was really interested in making a move and beating some other potential Premier League teams to the punch and getting Rowe over here for 2-3 seasons before then making his move back, that could be another option, right? Because we're thinking about two different ends of the spectrum here, obviously. James Ward-Prowse is somebody that is
29 and a half.
Yes, and has been 29 and a half for what feels like 5 years at this point. And Rowe is and I only mention Rowe because Dean Smith mentioned him by name specifically, and how he wasn't afraid to play young players.
And what he said, just whether we go sign new young players or we deal with the young players we already have, who I know we're all big fans of, both talking on this mic and listening to the side of the speaker. If you're young, if you're good enough, you're old enough. That's what Dean Smith said about playing young players. I thought it was probably the best thing I heard of the entire presser, to be honest, here as near the end of the episode, I finally busted out. But if you're good enough, you're old enough was perfect when you think about Kerwin Vargas, when you think about Patrick Ajman, when you think about the Ben Bender reclamation project, if it was to go forth. Like, we got a lot, Brandon Cambridge, we got like so many freaking youngsters, and they had to hear, like, if I'm Brandon Cambridge sitting in my apartment wondering why I don't own a house, and I hear the new manager come in and say, if you're good enough, you're old enough, I'm saying, all right, it's time to go get 1,000 minutes in MLS this season. Let's go.
Love that. Really do love that for a player like Brandon Cambridge, who I didn't mention in my column. I probably should have. I mentioned Vinny Mello, Patrick Ajman, and of course Kerwin Vargas, who I think Kerwin Vargas has he could have a very starring role to play.
Absolutely smashed for the Colombian national under-23 team at the recent CONMEBOL tournament this past month.
So I've got one more topic for you today before we get out of here, and that is because of some chatter I saw on social this morning about Enzo Capetti.
Love chatter.
And I wanted to relate this to something that we really never talked about on the show, which was MLS rule changes for 2024, the U.S. Open Cup, which, by the way, we talked about on Full-Time Roundup.
Right.
Which, by the way, you can hear Danny and I on Full-Time Roundup this week. Check your podcast feeds for that. I was a guest on Full-Time Roundup to recap the weekend in European soccer. You'll hear Danny and I again on that show later this week to do a full MLS roundup episode to kind of talk about the league from a 30,000-foot view postseason. We talked about the U.S. Open Cup situation there. We can get into that on another episode. But specifically for Enzo Capetti and Dean Smith and these rule changes, right? So let's start with the rule changes. Did you see that MLS is now making players, if they go down for a certain amount of time, stay out of the game?
Yes. immediately thought of Enzo. If you're down for more than 30 seconds, you have to sit out for 2 minutes, I think. Or 15, it might have been 15 seconds.
Yeah, it was like 10. Yeah,
if you're down for more than 15 seconds, you have to sit out on the sidelines for 2 minutes.
Right.
We can just might as well call that the Copetti rule.
I agree. I read that and I was like, Copetti can't stay down.
Right.
He can't stay down because of that rule. Otherwise, there would be some matches this season where Copetti would have legitimately been on the sideline for 8 minutes.
Right.
Because that's 4 times you go down for more than 15 seconds. That's 8 minutes you're on the sideline.
Yeah. 10% of the game.
So he needs to understand these new rules. Somebody needs to make sure to communicate that with Enzo Copetti. So that's number one, why I bring up Enzo. And number two, why I bring up Enzo Copetti is that there seems to be a debate happening among the supporters right now about whether Enzo Copetti was a Christian Lattanzio signing, whether a Christian Lattanzio signing can get in to a Dean Smith squad. We've talked about Patrick Agyemang a lot in a way that is maybe overvaluing what he can bring to the club from a goal per 90 point of view. I don't know if Patrick Agyemang is the guy that starts and plays 90 minutes every single match, but he's somebody that can certainly play more than he did.
Yeah, he can play 75 plus.
But he's also on $70,000.
Right.
And Enzo Copetti's on a lot more than that as your designated player. So where does Enzo Copetti fit into this squad? Just put your crystal ball on. I'm not asking this as a question like you know anything, but 6, 7, 8 games into the season, do you think we're seeing something from Enzo Copetti, or are we getting ready to sell him in the summer?
That probably will be the window, is that 8 game first quarter of the season is sort of like, show us what you got, Enzo, because like I do think the club will give him every chance to succeed. It's just, you can't just like piss away the money that we spent on him, and so you have to like.
Sometimes you got to eat cash.
Right, 100%. At the same time, you can't fall victim to sunk cost fallacy, which is like, oh, we paid all this money for this guy, we got to use him. If he's not good, you don't have to use him. Like, but at the same time, you do have to try to make him good. So it's like, they're going to work everything they can. I don't think that necessarily Dino's going to build his entire attacking game plan around Enzo, but he's going to try to get the most out of him. He's going to try to like cater to his strengths and what Enzo does well, which is finish moves. And Enzo's not a playmaker. He's not a really ball at his feet type of guy. He doesn't mind crossing from the wing, Copetti, but he's really more of a finish moves type of guy. He wants to have that 1 or 2 final touches that scores, that puts the ball in the back of the net, whether it's a header or a knee, or remember the one goal he scored this year where it was almost accidental, but it was like, oh, the technique. And it was like, it looked like he just kind of tripped over his own feet in the ball. But I think I'm in the mindset right now, just because of everything I saw from the most recent evidence of what I saw Enzo brings. I'm just like, and when we saw, first off, it was great when him and Agyemang were playing together up top against the Red Bulls. So there's a space for Patrick to play even if Enzo does. B, Enzo, I'm not going to fall victim to that fallacy. I'm not going to, if Enzo has scored no goals in the first 5 matches, I'm going to be like, sell him. Get him out of here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's why.
Sell him for 50% of what you paid and get him the fuck out. Because he is a Lattanzio.
I'd let him walk on free.
Yeah, right.
I would.
Yeah.
I've zero. When you don't, and this is life advice, when you make a bad decision, don't double down.
Right. Don't throw good money after bad.
Recognize that you've made the bad decision and just kind of leave it there to be. And I think Charlotte FC will come to the end of that road here and have to make that decision in the next 6 months. Because
Enzo's going to be the one that's going to have to change. Enzo's the one that's going to have to show that he's really in it. I know he got a crown. He's added a crown tattoo to his tattoo tableau. Was spotted on Instagram recently. Does that mean he's like committed to the crown? I don't think so. I think it just means I'm not a tattoo guy, but what I know from talking to people who do get a lot of tattoos is your tattoos just trying to tell the story of where you've been in your life. So it's not necessarily like he loves the crown. It's just like, oh, I was in Charlotte. The crown was part of my journey. I got to get a crown tattoo. I think that's a little bit more of what it's like. But
I think he already had a crown tattoo
that's possible
when he got
That's
signed.
possible as well. I don't know. I heard from Bridget that was sporting a new one, but who knows?
He's got a new one.
We'll see.
He's got a new one.
Could be bad info.
This is the end of the episode, but I'm glad that you waited to the end of the episode for a couple reasons. Because I'm going to fire off the hot take here, just kind of thinking about what's going on in and around the club right now. I think that the next 40 days, next 60 days is going to blow your mind.
Wow.
I think that you're in for a complete squad overhaul. I think that if you are reading the tea leaves, the reason why Dean Smith hasn't contacted anyone at the club on the player side except for Ashley Westwood is because this
keep them all guessing.
This is not going to go the way that it has gone with people being brought into the squad just because they're part of the club.
It'd be pretty fun to just like clean house. Just be like, all right, 5 of y'all are done. Five of y'all are out of here. I couldn't even name the 5, but it would just be fun. Like, I would feel bad for them as people, but it'd be funny to see Dean just clean house.
I think that the 5 would be Enzo Capetti, Camille Yusiak, Karol Swiderski, Guzman Carujo, and Jere Urinen.
Yeah.
I think that could be a 5 quick guys that you just say, like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good on the experience.
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody for being here. But
you said you were good on Byrne. You said you were good on Byrne. He came good.
Yeah, Nathan Byrne. And by the way, Nathan Byrne's somebody, a lot of championship experience. I think he's going to get on well.
Yeah,
the new
I think Bernie will get on very well for sure.
Byrne's got the best smile on the squad, so keep him around.
Yeah, for sure. It's an amazing take. 60 days from now is right when we will be finishing up the Coachella preseason tournament, if you look at the calendar. So, you tell me in 60 days I'm going to get my mind blown at Coachella. I'm in. Let's go. It won't be the first time. It won't,
It's been a great episode. And by the way, those 5 players that I just named, I'm kind of regretting saying Urinen because maybe he's somebody that sticks around.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll stick around. I don't think he's I know why you said it, because he didn't really, what did he really show us? Yeah. He was hurt half the time. But he was taking some corner kicks. I don't know. I think he's got some skills. But I just want to see Lindsay out there, so... Urinen is nothing against him, but he was signed at a time whenever he was pursued at a time when it was we need a left back, we need a left back, we need a left back, and then during the time it took to get him, Byrne and Lindsay emerged as this really good fullback pairing, and then it was so we bring him in, and it's we actually kind of had solved the problem already with Byrne and Lindsay, so whatever. Everyone's job is up, like you said. Everyone's fighting for the job.
Well, and by the way, my take could be wrong, where Dean Smith ends up just taking over the players that the club already has because the club believes that it was the manager that was the issue, and the new manager is going to get the best out of these players. That could happen.
I think there's some of that belief for sure. Go back to the drop points thing. I mean, we have a good core of players, but I like your take, and I hope it's proven correct.
Charlotte Soccer Show, John Hayes, Danny Brams. Danny Brams, cheers to you. Did you polish off that entire pot of French press?
I did, bro, and I've crossed the line into jittery here before I go into the office, so
it's great to see you this morning.
My coworkers.
Great to be here at Mugs here in South Charlotte on Park Road. Make sure you get over here. Good vibe. People working, people chatting, hanging out. Just less than a week away now from Christmas. Hope everybody has a great holiday season. And until next time, Danny Brams.
For the crown, baby.
During its 4 years of existence, 2 of them on the field, Charlotte FC has proven to be strong in the face of adversity. The COVID-19 pandemic forced the club to delay its inaugural season. MLS didn't ask, it told. Miguel Angel Ramirez was appointed manager and immediately isolated himself from the players, which caused unsalvageable locker room issues. Anton Walks' tragic death before the 2023 campaign made things extremely difficult for players, coaches, and supporters alike. None of this has been easy. It might never be. New Charlotte FC manager Dean Smith called for a siege mentality when speaking with a packed house of media members during his introductory press conference on Monday morning. Quote, Our job is to make sure we make every team that comes to play us at Bank of America Stadium dislike it. We want to make a siege mentality where it's us against them. Protect the keep is a battle cry Charlotte Soccer Show listeners will know all too well. This time, it's for real. The Crown is a new club in a growing league, and no one in MLS is going out of their way to help Charlotte become one of the biggest clubs in the country. A siege mentality is a collective state of mind in which a group of people believe themselves to be constantly attacked, oppressed, or isolated in the face of negative intentions of the rest of the world. Us against the world is the type of philosophy that accomplished manager Dean Smith has brought to the Queen City. Smith said, quote, "If I sat here and said I haven't come to win MLS Cup, then I shouldn't have been hired. The role is to be as ambitious as possible. My ambitions are to bring the MLS trophy here," end quote. The new gaffer, he's already playing on his front foot. Quote, "My driver has always been to prove people wrong," he said. "People will say it's going to be really, really tough for a club that's only 2 years old to win MLS, and that's already my driver." Smith also preached togetherness at Monday's press conference. Once you get a culture that's together and you get momentum, it's very, very difficult to stop, and that's what we need to create here, Smith said. The only player Smith mentioned by name was, of course, Captain Ashley Westwood. The new manager will rely on Westwood to keep this changing squad together in the coming months. Quote, "I don't know Ashley Westwood, but I reached out to him because my teams have played against him, just to get a feel from him about the roster and the league. He told me how difficult MLS is." One specific group of people should be extremely excited about Smith's appointment: young players. Quote, "If you're good enough, you're old enough," Smith shared with the group of assembled media and supporter group presidents. Smith went on to talk about giving Norwich's Jonathan Rowe his senior debut when he managed the Canaries. The 20-year-old Rowe is tearing up the championship this season and showing unbelievable promise. Interested parties that quickly come to mind are Patrick Agyemang, Kerwin Vargas, and Vinny Mello. Quote, "My job is to develop players. If I develop players, then the team develops. If the team develops, then we start winning soccer games." End quote. The era of Christian Lattanzio ranting about experienced players is over. Sporting director Zoran Krneta was also at the podium and quickly switched the club's narrative to accomplishing loftier goals. Quote, "We are not happy to be a playoff team, just a playoff team. We want to be a winning team. We want to be the team to host the MLS Cup one day in Charlotte and in the Carolinas." Krneta won't hide from the fact that he got it wrong with both Miguel Angel Ramirez and Christian Lattanzio, but those experiences have taught him valuable lessons. Charlotte Soccer City is told Smith and Krneta have assistant coaches circled who have extensive MLS experience on their resumes. Stay tuned for more on that. Atrium Health Performance Park is buzzing with energy heading into the 2024 season, and Charlotte FC supporters are feeling that same emotion about Smith's hire. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone is together. There is no doubt the club got this right. Less than 5 years into the club's existence, Charlotte FC has become a proper football club by hiring Dean Smith.